The Italian Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, has forged close links with the US President Donald Trump. But as his divisive policies against the European Union emerge, she's finding herself torn between Trump and the EU. How will she navigate this tightrope as trade tariffs hit? Or could she help bring him to the negotiating table? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Giorgia Meloni has found herself caught between EU rearmament plans, coalition divides, and Trump's revived tariffs on European goods. While France and Germany push for retaliation, the Italian Prime Minister is urging caution, fearing a trade war could fracture the West. How will Italy handle growing tensions with Washington and the EU?
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has quickly become one of Europe's most talked about leaders. She's known for her nationalistic rhetoric, but also for her surprising rise as a pragmatic power player in the EU. She has styled herself as a bridge between Washington and Brussels. Her close ties with the US president has earned her the name Trump Whisperer. The relationship will be put to the test as she heads to Washington for trade talks. Donald Trump hit the EU with 20% tariffs on what he called Liberation Day. He's since posed his plans for 90 days, allowing time for a deal to be made.
At the Italian and European levels, we must open a dialogue and negotiation that must be opened with the United States to seek solutions.
Trump believes the US hasn't been getting a good deal from the EU.
China's an abuser, but the European Union is very, very bad to us.
The European Union is the single largest trading partner of the US. Trump's tariff plans will put them under serious economic pressure. In particular, Italy, which is one of Europe's top exporters to the US, sending goods such as luxury cars, designer fashion, and industrial equipment. Can Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni keep Trump on side, as well as broker a deal to help her country and the European Union?
In Rome, we have Elena Lucaselli. She's a member of Giorgia Meloni's party, Brothers of Italy. Elena, how are you and your party feeling about Donald Trump and his tariffs and Giorgia Meloni going to America to talk to him? What's the vibe?
It was not really a surprise because Trump talked during his campaign about what was his plan for the America economy. What we think and what we are trying to convince Europe is that making a commercial war right now is not what Europe needs. And we need to be focused on putting down some dazi and some taxes that we already have. So the meeting that Meloni will have with Trump have this goal, this focus, which will be to open a new way to talk between Europe and United States about this. More important than this is that a European country used to put themselves to ourselves taxes that are not really need. And when I say this, I think the Green Deal or a lot of bureaucracy that we have that actually costs a lot to our companies and to our production. So I think this meeting will be very important to open a way to start talking about how to reduce dazi and not to put more dazi. And I think that in general, this commercial way to see what is happening in the world is the right way to approach the global problem, which is not only involve Europe or United States, but the idea of production. As you know, in the last 10 or 15 years, all our company moves from Europe to other country like China. for example, and we cannot compete for China because at the beginning was just to produce there. Then the Chinese took our know-how, and now because they have a complete different system than our system, European system or United States system, what happens is that they increase the production and there's no competition anymore because they don't pay actually workers. They don't have laws there to follow. So for them is much more easy to product and to have a massive production. So Europe and United States needs to bring back their own capacity to produce and to be the center of the world.
Elenia, tell me, do you think Giorgia Meloni is Europe's best chance now of getting a deal with Trump? He does seem to admire your prime minister.
Giorgia Meloni is for sure our best chance for two reasons. The first is the approach that she have on this type of a problem, which is very pragmatic, very realistic. And I think that a businessman as Trump is like that part of political talking. And second of all, because she's very clear about a long-term view, which is not only how to solve the issue tomorrow, but what we want to build for the next year, for the future. We want to be on this side, or we want to move to other side. Well, we know exactly where we want to be, is with United States, with NATO, with countries that have democracy and freedom, and that's where we wanna be. So I think that this meeting, and she will be the first of European leaders that actually can really open a way to talk with Trump.
Elenia, you mentioned NATO. Where does Meloni stand on a proposed European army? I mean, where is Italy now in terms of defence?
Well, we are working on arrive to the 2%. That was the things that Italy subscribed with NATO. And we are very focused on understanding what this will mean on impact on our economy and our industries. For sure, we know, and that this is one of the things that Fratelli d'Italia put in his political program before Meloni was elected as a president, that for us defense is one of the most important things to have, because it's the only thing that really guarantee the country the freedom, the liberty, and the ability and the capacity to give an answer if someone wanna touch your democracy.
And joining us from Manchester in England, we have Francesco Rizzuto. He is Professor of European Law. That's at the University of East London. Francesco, to you, just tell me, how difficult is this for Meloni and Italy balancing this relationship with America and Trump? Because very, very deep roots between Italy and the United States and an awful lot of trade.
This is an extremely challenging time for the Italian Prime Minister because she's being pulled two ways. Ideologically, not only because of the deep historical roots with the United States, but essentially she's being pulled ideologically towards Trump and his way of seeing the world. And if you like, her bread is buttered on the European side of the Atlantic. So it's hard for her. It's hard for her to choose, basically. And because Trump has provoked this, trade war, and I think we have to call it what it is, or if like the phony war at the moment, which is about to kick off, I think, from the next few weeks. The reality is that she's been caught two ways, and how she's going to come out of this, I don't know. I really think it's going to be extremely difficult for her to claim to be the spokesperson, the bridge for the European Union. The European Union has exclusive competence over commercial policy. So who is she speaking for? Italy, the European Union? Italy can only align with the commercial policy of the Union. Of course, it makes an input into that, but the idea that Italy is suddenly going to save Europe and get Mr. Trump to deflect, I think is a little bit forlorn. I don't see that happening.
Francesco, over many centuries, Italy's greatest export to America, I guess, was its people. But now that relationship, the trading relationship, is worth $71 billion to Italy. That is how much Italy exports to the United States every year. I mean, these are mind-blowing figures. Meloni has to get this right.
Absolutely, she has to get it right. If she doesn't get it right, but getting it right, remember, means what? That the Americans are going to make an exception of Italy and not an exception of Germany that exports more than Italy. Getting it right is the tricky question. Obviously, she needs to try and persuade Mr. Trump to lower these tariffs. But here, I think she needs to make the case that the president of the European Commission is making. In other words, let's go to zero tariffs. It's a way of calling his bluff there, but I think that Italy will not be able to do this alone. It's clearly in Italy's interest that we come to some kind of negotiated agreement with the United States, simply because of the impact that this would have on Italian pharmaceuticals, on Italian clothing, on Italian vehicles, you name it. There are very few sectors of the Italian economy that wouldn't be affected, and the idea that somehow things Italian are such that we're irreplaceable is perhaps a little bit misplaced. So she has got to try and ensure that she puts the European case that clearly is very, very important for Italy. But she can't, if you like, take Italy out of the EU equation without essentially destroying the European Union as we know it. And that's not going to happen.
And Francesco, just tell me, why do you think Trump likes Meloni so much? We know he admires strong characters, big personalities. She takes no prisoners, this lady.
She doesn't take prisoners. She's a very competent politician who the Italian people understand. Many may not agree with her, but they understand. No, I think that she and Trump are ideological bedfellows. They are essentially nationalists who believe in the idea of Italy first or America first. Remember, she whenever she talks, and you listen to her, she talks about the nation, la nazione, which is an interesting way of doing things. So they are basically ideological bedfellows. The only problem is, of course, that what's good for America is not necessarily good for Italy.
And joining us now from Rome, we have Angelica Donati. She's a construction entrepreneur and president of Ance Giovanni. Angelica, if we look at the financial mechanics of this, I mean, this relationship is huge for Italy, isn't it? $71 billion of trade every year. Giorgia Meloni needs to come back with something. She needs to keep President Trump happy.
You're right. Italy is one of the 3 only countries in Europe to have a trade surplus with the US. So obviously the stakes are higher for our country. And I guess that has been very clear also on the way markets responded. Italian markets tanked more than other European markets over the past turbulent few days. But I think it's very important for us to remember that though, of course, any kind of direct contact with President Trump by European presidents is good. It's great to establish personal rapport and to bring forward single country issues. President Macron did the same thing for France a few weeks ago. And it's important to have constructive dialogue. What is essential for us all to remember is that no single European country can negotiate effectively with the US on a standalone basis. The only strength Europe has is in its numbers. We are a 650 million person market. We are the biggest single trading partner the US has if we're taking globally. Individually, I wouldn't say we don't count because we still count individually, but our power is less. And so whatever President Meloni puts on the table needs to be put on the table in the interest not just of Italy, but of Europe.
And tell me, Angelica, I mean, what do you think Meloni will be happy with coming back? I mean, we know there's a 20% tariff on all European Union countries. Do you think she will come back with maybe 15% or 10%? Or will he just leave it as it is?
It's very hard to tell because it's very hard to understand what President Trump's strategy is with regards to the tariffs that he's put in place. Some people say it's a negotiating tactic. On the other hand, we know from President von der Leyen that the EU, as early as February 19th, I believe, had proposed 0 reciprocal tariffs on all industrial products between the US and Europe, and they were turned down. Because there's a bit of confusion between VAT and tariffs in the mind of policymakers in the US right now. So I honestly can't guess. Of course, we would all be happy if these blanket tariffs were reduced, if some of them were cut, but it's really hard to tell at present.
Francesco, as much as Meloni will be going there to protect Italian interests, she's very much part of the EU. I mean, Italy has done extremely well out of the European Union, as has my country, Ireland, just to be completely honest here.
Let me be a boring lawyer and say that we mustn't forget the various provisions of the treaty on the European Union, that essentially this is an exclusive competence of the Union, Article 206, Article 207, and the way in which we decide, Article 218. We can't escape it without tearing up the treaty. So the idea of Italy outside of the treaty just doesn't make sense. And I think that your previous speaker is absolutely right. We have to essentially, and Meloni has to operate within the framework that has been broadly agreed with the other countries of the European Union, and where they essentially put together a list of the things that they would like to negotiate on, because it's unlikely that Mr. Trump is going to agree that we're going to have a zero tariff, free trade Atlantic area between the EU and the United States. So if she operates within that kind of framework, I think, as your previous guest said, we can essentially, or the Italians can act as a valuable bridge that perhaps can open doors, but it's got to be within that context. Otherwise, it's simply a division. And I think Mr. Trump wants to divide the European Union, really, which I think is not very wise.
Angelica, to you, just give us an impression of what Italians make of Donald Trump. How is he viewed? I mean, is he popular, or does he polarize opinion?
I think Italians are no different to other countries in that he's a very polarizing and divisive figure. Some people support him and some people don't. But I think that what we need to all bear in mind is that whatever you think of him, the strategy that he's put in place, whether it's correct or not, good or bad, has definitely been designed with what he believes are America's interests, which are not necessarily our interests. So what Italians, but Europeans in general, need to do is focus on what our common interests and common goals are, irrespective of the desires of the counterpart, which in this case is Donald Trump and the American people that he is trying to represent.
And Angelica, you know, the whole issue of a European army and spending on defence and putting money into defence, where does Meloni stand on that? Does she differ much from what Trump wants European countries to be doing?
Our President Meloni has been very vocal on the specific topic of European defense, in confirming support for Ukraine, but saying that she doesn't want Italian soldiers to step foot in Ukraine at the time being. I think in general, the issue, or rather the opportunity, let's talk about opportunities now, because every challenge carries opportunities with it as well, is for Europe to go towards that stronger cohesion, a stronger fiscal policy, or rather a unitary fiscal policy, which is something that's always been on the wish list following the introduction of the euro, common spending on strategic objectives, and all of the things that are long overdue to create a stronger union within and between European countries, and also the elimination of the intangible barriers between European countries to make internal commerce better, internal trade more fluid, and to increase our competitiveness within our common market, and therefore also improve our situation vis-a-vis our international commercial partners.
Francesco, I mean, Italy is a proud member of NATO, spends a lot on its defence, and crucially, a lot of American aircraft use Italian air bases and have done for decades. I mean, this is a relationship that Trump needs to be careful with too. It surely is not one-way traffic with Italy going and Meloni begging for tariff reductions. I mean, the Americans need to be aware that Italy is a long-standing ally and friend, and that there are very deep roots, radici profonde, as they say in Italian.
Yes, but I don't think Mr. Trump really... that's not one of his priorities, frankly. If we've seen the whole approach of the new administration, the Trump administration, to NATO and the defense of Europe, it's pretty clear that not only do they want the Europeans, including the Italians, to spend more on defending themselves, but really they're going to perhaps withdraw from Europe, including from Italy. So I think the real challenge for Europe, look, Trump is there. He's not going to go away. He's going to be replaced, unless something terrible happens, by somebody who will be like-minded. Europe has a real challenge over the next decade and beyond, and that is to implement what I think your previous speaker was edging towards, the Draghi plan. In other words, we've got to make Europe more competitive. We've got to make sure that the single market reduces barriers and that we need the savings that we have effectively. We also need to be able to look after our own security. Notice when I talk about defense, I don't talk about just tanks and guns and missiles. They're important, but I think, and here Meloni had a point, though it didn't really emerge that clearly, we need to talk about European security in its multi-dimensional sense, because threats to European security are not just about tanks from Moscow rolling into Madrid, which is not going to happen, frankly, but there are other kinds of threats. I do think that when it comes to defense, the approach the European Union has taken has not been a correct one. I think that the emphasis should have been, as your previous speaker said, on cohesion, on actually ensuring that we didn't carve up and each little state rearms itself, so that we don't actually spend our resources appropriately, so that we don't actually ensure that we have a European defense where you might have national armies, but where the cohesion and structure is, if you like, united. And here we can use the European arm of NATO to achieve that. But, you know, frankly, I think we have to come to terms with the fact that the Americans care very little for Europe under this administration.
Angelica, just final point to you. This is a big responsibility then for Giorgia Meloni. heading to America, sitting down with Trump. Italy's future is on her shoulders.
Well, I mean, she's the prime minister, and by virtue of that, Italy's future is definitely on her shoulders for the course of her mandate. I just wanted to add, yes, 100% to what Professor D'Souza was saying. I was referring to the Draghi plan, and I do agree with what he just said. I think President Meloni's visit is very important, and as I said, it's not just important for Italy's positioning because of the fact that any kind of deal that is made won't be or shouldn't be an Italy-only deal, but it should be a European deal. But her opportunity now is to be front and center in the decision-making process for Europe and to give Italy the centrality that it deserves as one of the most relevant countries in Europe to set the course for future action, which must, as the professor was saying, not just only focus on response to these tariffs that Europe didn't want. I mean, Ursula von der Leyen said very clearly yesterday that Europe had already proposed zero tariffs on industry to the US, and those were turned down. So it's obviously not about this current trade war. It's not about whether we respond tit for tat or whether we do nothing, but it's about setting a long-term strategy which focuses on cohesion and growth to benefit of Italy, of Europe, and of our union as a whole.
Angelica and Francesco, grazie mille. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.